No matter where you are in the world, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, did you imagine that it would last throughout 2020? Did you know that the isolation that many of us are experiencing with the pandemic is similar to what a cancer patient experiences? Has the isolation created a shift in your relationships? Welcome to the Inspired Vitality Show. I'm Catherine, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the isolation equation and how to get the results that you want from your relationships. When a person is diagnosed with cancer, they often find themselves isolated, or they may have people showing up for them in unexpected ways. The patient may have to limit time with others due to a lowered immune system, and they might form bonds through people that they meet online who can relate to their experience. Do you see the parallels here? During this pandemic, in general, people are cautious about germs and they are connecting more online. Both cancer and COVID isolation may have a lasting impact on our relationships, and this is something that we really need to be made aware of. Those of you who are experiencing isolation for the first time with this pandemic might be thinking, duh, we've been going through this isolation and shift in relationships for months on end. You might also be thinking, there are vaccines on the way and this is going to be over soon, so changing relationships is no longer relevant. However, in my experience with cancer, a shift in relationships not only happens during the isolation, but also when normalcy returns if it hasn't been nurtured. Returning to the pre-isolation dynamics in a relationship is not a given. Distance does not bond, it creates separation. When I had cancer, I noticed that some people backed off. This might be because they had their own stuff going on, or maybe they couldn't handle the situation. There were others that I wasn't that close to when I was diagnosed, but they showed up for me in ways that I couldn't even imagine that I needed. Once I was done with the active treatment and my immune system was stronger and some of the people who had backed off actually showed up again. It was at that point with that stronger body and clearer mind that I could reflect and choose to allow them back into my life, or not at all, or to what degree. It was a time for me to look around and really reflect about the fact that I didn't communicate what I needed and whether the relationships could or should be maintained. The difference between cancer isolation and the COVID isolation is that with cancer, often the patient feels it deeply, and perhaps the caregiver too. But with the people on the other side of the relationship are not going through the same experience. With COVID, although each household is very different, we're all going through the isolation to a degree. There are some completely isolated and some isolated with family members, perhaps overwhelmed within their home, but isolated from their social circle. Don't be the victim of the circumstances and allow relationships you cherish to dissolve. Here's the thing. If you've noticed a shift in a relationship and you are unhappy about it, it's not too late. You can choose to nurture that relationship now so that you can come out with a strong connection once the isolation is over. Communication and connection are key if you want to maintain a relationship. Communicate your desire to nurture the relationship and discuss how you will connect. On the flip side, if you have felt that being without a particular person is more positive right now, perhaps continuing that distance will be the best thing for you. Only you can decide that. Think of it as an equation. Due to cancer or COVID, isolation is added, and you may end with a result of either stronger or disconnected relationships. If you want your answer to be stronger, then you add communication to the isolation equation. You will likely emerge strong. Consider the fact that you can be an active participant in deciding to maintain, improve, dissolve, or add new relationships. What you do now will impact the answer. And in fact, not being an active participant in your relationships is a passive choice that you might be making that's also going to impact the result. I encourage you to reflect and acknowledge the quality of your relationships during this isolation so that when it's time to emerge, you'll be surrounded by a solid, loving circle of people. Ask yourself these questions. Have you noticed a shift in your relationships? How do you want these relationships to look once you're able to socialize more? Are you willing to nurture your relationships now or change the equation to get the answer that fulfills you? Whether you are isolated due to cancer, the pandemic, or both, relationships may have shifted. You can bring them back into alignment by communicating your desires and connecting with your loved ones. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.